Welcome to The Explainer, where we break down big ideas. Today, we are diving into one of the oldest and, honestly, most powerful concepts in human history, the Promised Land. It's this incredible story of home, exile, and a hope that completely reshapes our understanding of where we truly belong.
Okay, so let's just be honest for a second. Have you ever been reading an ancient text, totally into the story, and then you hit a chapter that feels, well, like you're just wading through mud? I'm thinking of chapters 13 through 21 in the book of Joshua, right? They're just these long, super detailed lists of who got which piece of land. And if you're a modern reader, it kind of feels like you're reading ancient property deeds. Maybe important back then, but you're thinking, what does this have to do with me?
But here's the thing. What if those seemingly dry lists are actually the whole point? They were meant to show that God's promise wasn't just some vague, dreamy idea. It was real, tangible. We're going to follow this map, and you'll see how this simple promise of land just explodes into this profound idea about home, belonging, and an ultimate hope for all of us.
So, to really get a handle on this promise, we have to rewind. We've got to go all the way back to the very beginning, to the home that was lost. See, the whole search for a promised land only makes sense if you first understand what was left behind.
The Garden of Eden? Well, you can think of it as the original blueprint for perfect living. It wasn't just a pretty garden. It was a place of total abundance and beauty, where humanity had this direct, unbroken relationship with its creator. And this idea of abundant life, it becomes the central theme for the whole concept of a promised land. But when the first humans broke that relationship of trust, everything changed. Their relationship with the garden itself changed, and they were exiled. And right there, that moment establishes the core problem this entire story is trying to solve, our deep, universal search for home, for a place where we truly belong again.
Okay, so from here, the story starts to build. That abstract idea of a lost home, it now becomes a concrete promise of a new one. The promise moves from a symbolic garden to a very real physical place you could find on a map, Canaan.
And you have to try and put yourself in their shoes. After centuries of slavery in Egypt, the Israelites were completely rootless. They belonged nowhere. Someone else got all the rewards for their work. So for them, the promise of actually owning land, wow, it wasn't just about property. It was this radical promise of freedom, of identity, of a whole new beginning.
And this timeline, it just brilliantly shows the kind of patience this required. I mean, for 400 years, the land was just a promise. The patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they lived their whole lives by faith, holding on to this vision of a home they would never, ever personally own. It was this long, long journey of trusting a promise that was still way off in the distance.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Getting the gift, receiving the land, that wasn't the end of the story, not by a long shot. This land wasn't some kind of entitlement. It came with some serious strings attached, some responsibilities that were woven right into the fabric of their society.
This one verse changes everything. The land was a gift of grace, absolutely, but it ultimately belonged to God. The people, they were just stewards, or, as the text says, strangers and sojourners. Basically, long-term guests living on his land. And that one idea was meant to shape their entire economy and social life.
So to stop permanent poverty from taking root, to stop a few powerful families from gobbling up all the land, this radical system called the Jubilee was put in place. You can think of it as a massive societal reset button. It was designed to be a great equalizer, reminding everyone that the poor have just as much right to a place in God's world as the wealthy do.
Just think for a second how revolutionary this was. Every 50 years, the entire economy would just reset. No family could be permanently kicked off their land. This whole system was built to give everyone a fresh start and to build a society based on equality, compassion, and the shared understanding that they were all dependent on God's grace. But history shows that Israel failed. They didn't keep these conditions. They neglected the poor, turned to idolatry, and that ultimately led to them being exiled from the land. And this is the crucial turning point. This is where the very nature of the promise gets transformed and goes so much deeper.
So after the exile, you see the prophets start pointing to a totally new kind of fulfillment. The hope isn't just for a piece of real estate anymore. It's for a future king who would bring true restoration. The promise starts to pivot from a place to a person.
And right here, the concept fully evolves.
The writers of the New Testament see all these promises finding their ultimate fulfillment in Jesus Christ. The promised land becomes a powerful symbol for the spiritual rest, the peace, the belonging that anyone, anywhere, can find in a relationship with God through Him. It becomes a spiritual home accessible to absolutely everyone.
And that brings us full circle to the ultimate fulfillment of this ancient promise and what it all means for us today, as we live as pilgrims and wanderers in our own right.
So this epic journey that began with an exile from a garden is destined to end with a welcome into a totally restored world. It's described as this peaceful land with living streams, a city whose designer and builder is God, where all His people finally find their true, eternal home.
And this verse, man, it just captures the essence of the entire journey. It's a call for us to live as prisoners of hope. We're not chained by despair, but by the confident expectation, the certainty of a final, complete restoration that has been promised.
And so that really leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? This huge narrative, from a physical land to a spiritual kingdom to a restored earth, it really challenges us. It forces us to think about our own stewardship, our own sense of belonging, and how we live as hopeful strangers in this world, all while looking forward to that ultimate home that's still to come.